So many of you remember my 2025 series on the 12 powers. I did 1 power a month. And these are concepts from the book, The 12 Powers of Man, by Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore. Nowadays, of course, we would say the 12 powers of humans, right? Today's lesson title is Applying the 12 Powers with Mindfulness. And as I've said before, these powers are innate and they're active in our lives all the time. Each of us has them, there's no exceptions. And not just once in a while, but all the time. And when we are centered in our true spiritual nature, the Christ consciousness, we will naturally be mindful about how we use our 12 powers. And they will support us and guide us and support others on our way. However, when we're mesmerized by the material, we might use our powers without mindfulness. Now, mindfulness can be defined as intentionally bringing attention to the present moment with compassion and awareness. So it's seeing the big picture and our place in it, so we have awareness, but also with that compassion, with the gentleness. In Pali, which is the original language of the Buddha, the word sati is the word that's translated as mindfulness. And a more direct translation is memory or recollection. So when we're mindful, what are we remembering? To be present, here and now, to tap into our deepest awareness, to listen for wisdom from within. We're remembering who we really are. And who are we? We're powerful spiritual beings with the capacity to use our powers to support life and love. So today we're going to revisit and take a closer look at how we've been applying our 12 powers with mindfulness, maybe sometimes not. So first, what are the 12? Give them to me. Wisdom, love, faith, understanding, life, imagination, zeal, strength, release, divine order, faith. Maybe that would be zeal, Nikki. Enthusiasm, zeal, right? Will. Did we get them all? I think we did. I think we got them all and maybe more. And there are really, there's a lot of words we can put on our powers. You know, we can say enthusiasm. We can say joy, like Gwen Curry so gracefully did last week. I watched the recording. So we got them. Those are our 12. Here they are. Whoop, I didn't flip. So as I noted, all these powers are innate. We all have them. Not just once in a while, but all the time. We have them right here and now. The real question is, how have we developed our relationship with our powers, and how are we using them in our day-to-day lives? The last time I talked about the 12 powers, I went through the powers one by one using the simple affirmation, I am blank. I am faith, I am life, I am love. And the purpose was to say the affirmation and note our resonance with it. And if we perceived resistance, it might mean that we're not quite in resonance with it. We're not quite fully accepting it in our lives. Ultimately, we're wishing to find a balance with all these powers, utilizing all of them, not just like, I like love or I have imagination, but that we're utilizing all of them with balance. So we need, for example, we don't want to use power without love. And what would love be without wisdom? Some of us have gotten us into some situations with love without wisdom, right? Okay, I'll speak for myself. So now each power has an associated color with it. I know you can't read all the fine print, but these are showing the colors that are associated with the 12 powers. So it's a rainbow, and the powers also metaphysically represent each of the 12 disciples. And the disciples each have individual strengths, which work together to support Jesus, who metaphysically represents our Christ consciousness. So our Christ consciousness, our true nature, has all of these qualities. And each power is also associated with a location in the body. So together they're forming the whole system. The association of this rainbow of colors, the 12 disciples, and the parts of the body all remind us that these different qualities have the potential to work together to support a diverse and yet unified life. In The 12 Powers of Man, Charles Fillmore wrote, "We do not encourage those who still have worldly ambitions to take up the development of the 12 powers." So he goes on to say that trying to use them to gain money, control others, or display power over others will lead to disappointment. And while the spiritual use of these powers will lead to joy, glory, and life. If we believe this, it is worth our time to discern how the powers are at play in our lives. As humans, with the cultural, religious, and familial influences we have, it is no surprise that we have different comfort levels and different levels of ability as to the skillful use of our various powers. In Heart-Centered Metaphysics, Paul Hasselbeck speaks about using our powers in two ways. And the two ways are degeneration and regeneration. Degeneration is using our 12 powers from sense consciousness. When we're mesmerized by the material world, we're clinging and resisting. And regeneration is using them from a spiritual or higher consciousness, when we are in tune with the Christ nature within, contributing to the creation of a loving and supportive world. As an example, he talks about how we can use the powers to degenerate or regenerate our self-concept of our worth. If we believe we are not worthy, we are putting faith in the idea of unworthiness. And we might use our power of strength to hold on to this belief, and our power of imagination to envision and eventually manifest how this unworthiness will show up in our life. This is degeneration, using the powers in a way that keeps us stuck. Once we recognize these errors, however, we can realize that these beliefs have no power over us. We can then begin to claim the truth of our inherent worthiness, our divine nature. We can believe in our worthiness with our power of faith. We can stay the course of living in this belief with our power of strength, and use our power of imagination to envision and manifest a new way of living for ourselves. In this way, our thoughts start to shape our reality, and we realize our divine nature. This is regeneration, stepping into our true powers, living through and as them. The Revealing Word Metaphysical Dictionary says of thought, every thought clothes itself in the life form according to the character given it by the thinker. In other words, we begin to experience the world in line with how we think. Now, sometimes, with even slight reflection, we can easily see when we are caught in error thinking. At other times, it's not so clear. So I want to introduce a couple concepts from Buddhism today. And they are the far enemy and the near enemy. And they're used to help us have a deeper discernment. A far enemy is the opposite of the virtue, or in this case, the opposite of the power. It is easier to spot because it doesn't look at all like the power. The opposite of respect is disrespect or being insulting. It is clear that being insulting is not respect. But a near enemy is trickier. It may look like the virtue or power on the surface, but it misses the mark. Respect's near enemy might be flattery or being patronizing. These behaviors kind of masquerade as respect, but they're not quite there. So the near enemy is a false or counterfeit, superficial version. Another example from Bringing Home the Dharma, this is a book by Jack Kornfield, and he says, the near enemy of compassion is pity. Instead of feeling the openness of compassion, pity says, oh, that poor person. I feel sorry for people like that. Pity sees them as different from ourselves. It sets up a separation between ourselves and others. So the near enemy can confuse us into thinking that we're using our powers when really we may be bypassing them or applying them in unskillful ways that may undermine things. Kelly Wendorf writes in the article, Near Enemies, a concept that can transform your life. When you identify near enemies in yourself and others, it liberates you from the confusion, incongruence, and unskillfulness that these imitators create. So near enemies are more subtle. Brene Brown speaks of them as, quote, greater threats, because we don't recognize them in ourselves and others, leading to some confusion. Then, when we stop short of, then we may stop short of claiming our full powers. It's sort of like we have a costume on, but we think it's who we really are. Let's try identifying what they might be in relation to our 12 powers. So we have faith, the power to believe, intuit, perceive, believing the divine is living as the universe and as us. What might be the far enemy, the opposite of faith? Fear? Doubt? Worry or lack of trust? Right, any of these. What might be that near enemy? Something that looks like faith but isn't quite there.
A pastor.
What's that?
A pastor.
A pastor? Okay. Say that again. Spiritual bypassing, right? So we might have a problem and our mind is caught in it, and we just say one of our affirmations and we pretend we're fine, but we're really not dropping in and working on the problem. So it might be blind optimism, it might be gullibility, and like Millie said, spiritual bypassing. So it was kind of like the time when my kids were younger and I was told I needed to be out of my apartment in a month. And I went to look for apartments, and I swear it was the first one I saw in my price range, beautiful apartment, loved the neighborhood, and I was like, this is it, I've been guided, I'm here, and I didn't pay attention to the little things that were telling me, no, it isn't, and I moved out in 6 months. So that was me having my blinders on. It wasn't true faith. I wasn't listening. I wasn't using those other powers. How about love? So what's the opposite? Hate, tied in with fear, right? Right? Okay, so what might be a near enemy or kind of counterfeit love? It's masquerading as love. Infatuation, love bomb. Could be. Okay, so it could be that pity, right? It could be desperate clinging. It could be nice at our own expense, right? They look like love, but are they? Codependency, right? Polite obligation. Oh, they're so nice, they'll do everything you ask, right? It's not bringing in those other powers. And I want to tell this other story too. I belonged to this gym, and I had this class, it was actually my Aikido class, that I loved. And you paid the gym price, and you could work out at the gym, and then you could go to all the classes. There were other kinds of classes. And then the gym owner suddenly decided that the Aikido class costed extra. You had to pay every time you went in addition to your gym membership, which effectively doubled my cost. Woo, right? So I went to talk to him, and we had this conversation where we're both kind of heated. I'm explaining, he's not seeming to listen, he's defending. And then all of a sudden, it was time to go, and he goes, "Namaste." It didn't feel like love, I'll tell you. I mean, there's a lot of things he could have said that I... Okay, so that wasn't it. All right, strength. So the strength is the power to stabilize, be courageous, and stay the course. So what's the opposite? Weakness, lack of endurance, giving up, right? What about that false version, the near enemy? So it looks like it, but it isn't quite there. Right, toughness, acting tough. Oh, I can billow my way through this, right? Might be stubbornness, that bravado. Oh yeah, well, I'm fine, right? Resignation, like plugging away because you think you have to, right? Not the same. It might be staying in a relationship that is no longer serving, right? But you're doing it. You're there. You're holding the fort down, right? Okay, wisdom. The power of judgment, discernment, intuition. So the opposite? I didn't hear. Ignorance. Naivety. I don't know how to say the word, but I changed it. I should have just said naive. Naivete, right? So foolhardiness, being uninformed, right? These are all opposites. They're clear to see, right? Clearer to see. Sometimes we do them. But that real close version, what they call the near enemy, that's masquerading as wisdom, what might that be? Ego. Intellectual cleverness, right? So we got all the facts, we know, maybe very disconnected from the heart, right? And just that focus on just the concrete facts, like this is the way we always do it, right? And I'll tell you, I fall into this, especially when people tell me what I want to hear. I might know it's not true, but boy, I want to believe it. And I think that's now, they got all the algorithms on the computers. They tell you what you want to hear. Yeah, I know because I saw it on Facebook, or that's for us older folks. What the younger folks are on, what are they on now? Twitter? You don't know? Okay. Anyway, but they're telling us, what we want to hear. And it's easy to get sucked in and just pass things along, Okay, next we have power, the power of self-mastery. The power of power is about self-mastery and authority, okay? So what's the opposite of power? Weakness. Okay, weakness, being ineffectual, not competent, maybe subservience, right? Certainly not standing up in your full self, right? So what is that? Looks like power, but isn't really the sense of real power? Control, right? We're trying to control those outer circumstances with outer might and with privilege. We're trying to control the way things are, but it really comes from insecurity. It's not true power. Super harmful, right? We're seeing this in the world right now. Super harmful. Imagination, the power to conceive, envision, and embody. The opposite? Dullness, right? Closed-mindedness, thinking and living in the box, blandness. All right, so what's a false, it's almost imagination, but something doesn't quite feel right. What's that near enemy? Wishful thinking. That might be escapism, like, something's going on in our life, we don't want to face it, so we just kind of pretend it's not there. I was thinking about, like, when people create things to get the sale or to please others. Well, this is what the audience wants, so I'm going to give it to them. It's sort of creative. People might like it, but it's not the true sense of deep, I'm expressing my creativity. So in the world today, it might be, thinking, we've solved racism and sexism and homophobia. It's not happening to me, right? So it's this idea, it's using your imagination to not see what's really there. Okay. Understanding. The power to comprehend, realize, have insight. Opposite? Confusion, misunderstanding, judging. All right, and what about that near enemy? It's almost like understanding. Could be spiritual bypassing again, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't hear the next one. Dismissiveness, right? Condescension. Okay. Rationalizations, making assumptions and judgments based on appearances. Could be that intellectual understanding, not dropped in. And so it's tempting to make our decisions on maybe this intellectual level, this idea that I already know, and I'm making these decisions. And so that's, I've calculated the correct answer, and it's right for you and you and you, and that's not understanding, right? But it might look like it, they look like they have it all together. Here's will, which is the power to choose the path of spirit and willingly commit. So the opposite? Willfulness. Might be confusion. So if this is about choosing a path and committing, we're confused, we have indecision, right? And that near enemy, it looks like it, but it isn't quite there. Anyone? So it's making these decisions without discernment, right? Like we can look like we know exactly where we're going, we got it together, we look right, we talk right, we're on the path. I know exactly where I'm going to be in 10 years, but we're not dropped in. And this can be like that willfulness, the egoic will, acting out of obligation. My parents wanted me to be a doctor. Now I'm on that path. There I am, right? So none of this is being powerfully committed to the spiritual path. It's not using all those other powers to inform our will. Order, the power to organize, adjust, and evolve. What's the opposite? Chaos, right? Disarray, disorder, randomness. Sometimes that gets me. I just, things coming in randomly. So that's the opposite. But that near enemy, what kind of tricks us with order? What's a false version? So it might be like a rigid insistence. Things have to be this way. This is the way it is, right? Perfectionism, right. I didn't even have that down. That's a good one. Yeah. Inflexibility, controlling things, right? We think it's order, but it's something we're pushing. We've got like this inner agenda that isn't quite settled. I'll tell another little story. This one's from my childhood. I had a couple little friends from across the street over, and my room was a mess. I haven't been the neatest person. And so they came over, and they're going to help me clean. And they help me clean. They go home, and then I look in my garbage can, and there's my stamp collection, and I can't remember what else. I remember my stamp collection. So they're wanting this order. They just indiscriminately went through, I don't think this is of value. It's putting an order onto others and onto something without that consideration and respect. All right. Zeal, the power of enthusiasm, audacity, devotion. We might call it Gwen Curry. She's something. I love her. Okay, so the opposite. What's the opposite of zeal? Okay, laziness, maybe. Negativity. Depression. Dullness. Apathy, right? Having kind of a reluctance. Yeah, so all these, yeah. Okay, now, but what is the near enemy? The one that's close, the one that confuses us. It looks like zeal, but it might not be so authentic. Mania, right? You know? Toxic positivity. You know? Fanaticism. Overexcitement. Right? Yeah, any of these. I'll give what, did you have another? No? Okay, another story. When I was student teaching, you know, I had the cooperating teacher I was working with, and when we were alone, she had kind of was the opposite of zeal. You know, her face, you know, she didn't smile much, and she kind of talked gruff. And then as soon as the kids came in the room, she talked like this. And the worst part is she wanted me to talk like that too. I couldn't do it. Could not do it. You know, I was happy to be there with the kids, but I wanted to be myself. I wanted to be authentic. So that is kind of a false appearance. You know, I don't know if it was for me, for her. I'm not going to get into her stuff, but for me it would have been, for sure. All right, release or renunciation, the power to make clean and let go. What's our opposite? Hoarding. For those of you online, I don't know if I should name names. Someone said constipation. Okay. So it might be clinging, right? It's not letting go. You know, the thing is past, and we're still trying to keep it. So, but what is that one that tricks us? What is something that looks like release, but it isn't really? It isn't really a spiritual release.
They bring their stuff here.
Okay, so it might be, you know, that friend every time you see them, and you know, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then this happened, and then that, oh, and can you believe it? And then this, you know, after a while, like, you know, is that real release? You know, is there a healing happening? Is it part of a power, right? It might be hiding feelings of hurt. Ignoring, yeah. So sometimes, I mean, I know to me it's a telltale sign when someone's telling me about something that happened and they say, I don't really care. You know, and it's like, you know, that there's care there, there's hurt there, there's something there, and it's hiding there. I don't want to face it. It might also, the near enemy might also be indifference, right? So it might be ghosting someone, it might be burning bridges to avoid conflict, it might be all these things. They can look like release. Oh, I got rid of him, but what if you had stayed? What if you had had a conversation? Now, sometimes the discernment is cut the tie, and that's a real release and a discernment. And sometimes, you know, it might be our own stuff getting activated. And if we just cut tie, then we're standing there alone, right? Okay, life, the power of vitality and presence. Opposite? Okay, we say death, but in the sense of the spiritual power, life never ends. Life is an energy. Life is our vitality. Life is presence, okay? Things change forms, but life continues. So what would be the opposite? Stagnation? Hopelessness? What was it? Sad? Sadness? Mm-hmm. Apathy. Might be lack of focus, listlessness. I kept putting words in here that I can't say. Listlessness. I'll get through it, folks. Okay, so all these things are opposites. Now, what would be that near enemy, that version that it looks like someone exuding life, but not quite in a spiritual sense? Lunacy? Acting, right, could be acting. What about pushing ourselves to go, go, go? No, it's fine, yeah, I'm going to go. Oh, I have to go to that party, and I'm going to be social, and, right? People might be like, oh, yeah, she comes to every party we invite her to. You know, is your heart there? You know, are you loving it? Might be hyperactivity. I know when I feel like my traumas are coming up, ooh, I get busy. Let's just do something, right? You can do something. And so it could be filling our lives with action to avoid stillness, you know? And we need to be sensitive. Didn't have this in here, but I do think it's important to realize that if something like trauma comes up and we don't feel like we can be still and we're discerning that, it's important to honor that. And it's perfectly fine to be active and exercise and do what you need to do to center. And at the same time, if that's our only go-to, and when we start to build some resilience, we still don't stop. You know, then we're missing an opportunity to learn something different. Okay. So going through all this today has been a bit of a mental activity. We're talking about it, right? But it's the intention to bring some awareness to how we might be applying these powers or not. But where the pedal hits the metal is when we take these observations, we take these ideas and meditate on them for discernment, to see how excuse me, to see how we can then apply them more directly in our lives. So it's not about understanding them, again, intellectually. It's about taking them in and seeing, does this have a lesson for me? What can I learn? And we can't bring intentional change to that which we don't notice or understand. So that's the reason for the conversation. But it takes time and gentleness and deep listening to discern how to apply our powers so that they're really a blessing to us and others. When we notice that we're not in tune with that spiritual use of the powers, it is important to not bring resistance to that or judgment. This is why I don't love the term near enemy, just because that word enemy, it's not something we want to fight with in my estimation, right? It's something that needs gentleness and understanding. It needs the powers to, okay, what's happening here that I'm approaching this way? And in practice, you know, again, we want to realize it's more like we have this costume on, and we're like, hey, wait a minute, that's not really me. Let's take that off. And so we're uncovering who we really are. But it is so human to sometimes have that false front up. Sometimes it's protective, or to do the opposite of a power, or use a power in a way that doesn't ultimately serve. We might even fool ourselves for a while. But, and this is a big but, it's our nature to shine with all of these powers, all of them. They are right here all the time. So, noticing the things we're thinking and believing that are not in alignment and identifying them is the first step. This is done compassionately. It's something to celebrate, really, because we're waking up. Then we can meditate on it. We can get clarity or discernment. We can remember that these false beliefs don't have power over us. This is what Unity calls spiritual denial or negation. We recognize what is present. We're not denying it. We're not pretending it's not there, like that racism, sexism, homophobia. But while recognizing it, we realize it does not have power over the truth of our being. That we are more than that, and we can move in this world in our power. So in any moment, we can pause and claim that power, and we can adjust and with discernment take our next step. So whatever you did last year, last week, or even earlier today, this is a new moment in which you can claim these powers. And as many times as you've noticed you may have slipped into a false belief or practice, we can all gently adjust that course and recenter in our power. And this is true self-mastery.